There is an old adage, one that you might have heard from a grandparent or village wise person, the one that says, you get out what you put in, meaning your efforts are matched to some degree by the results or the output. Now take our nonprofit, Pioneer Knowledge Services, who delivers this cool program that you're listening to right now, takes a bunch of effort that you don't even see. We hope that you obtain value from our efforts to deliver it to your powers of reason. Here is where you come in. You, the listeners. Make our efforts rewarded. Consider donating to keep us moving forward. Visit pioneer-ks.org and click on donate. Pioneer Knowledge Services welcomes you to the next Because You Need to Know. I'm your host, Edwin K. Morris. I serve as president and founder of this organization, and we are thrilled to offer this educational program. These design conversations bring you people's experiences from all over the globe in the field of knowledge management, nonprofit work, and innovation.
Hi there, my name is Elizabeth McLean on LinkedIn. I live in Huntingtown, Maryland, which is outside of the Washington, D.C. region, very close to the Chesapeake Bay, which means Maryland blue crabs, Old Bay, Calvert Cliffs Miocene fossils, and depending on where you are, Orioles baseball or Nats baseball. I absolutely love working on knowledge management for international development. I have had experience with international development for a number of years, and it is a model that I love because it's really focused on collaborative learning and adapting for innovation. The field that I work in is knowledge domain modeling. This has been an evolutionary process, and I'm sure Edwin will tease that out. And the thing that I've learned about myself is that I am a third generation information sharer. My grandmother was married to a White House press correspondent, and she was very well read. Whenever she saw articles that she thought so-and-so would need, she clipped them out and sent them in letters. My mother did the same thing. And it took me a while to realize that every time I saw something that I thought someone needed, that they didn't necessarily want me to send to them. So I have to curtail my natural third generation instincts of information sharing to some degree. I've also learned that I am never not learning, but it's not just for the sake of learning, it's for problem solving with knowledge flow. I create value by facilitating knowledge flow and knowledge sharing.
So this first glimpse of what a concerned citizen can do with knowledge to help others is a not self-serving mentality. It is other-directed. Where did she get that knack? Where did she get that?
Grandmothers have special powers,
So give me grandmother's name.
Grandma Ann.
Grandma Ann was conscientious and thoughtful in developing people's knowledge.
Correct. And what did they not know that she needed to help them figure out?
How was that received at that time? Do you know? Do you know how? Because I can just imagine some people would be like, hey, who are you to tell me anything?
I don't know how extensive her practice was in those years. I just know I would get a letter and there would be folded up newspaper clippings.
That is so cool.
And I would think to myself, well, I'm not really sure how this applies to me, but thanks, Grandma.
So she must have just loved. I almost want to relate it to like gardening, right? So she is just constantly fostering, and you're saying it not always was a like, wow, this is a little out of left field, maybe.
Sometimes,
it wasn't always straight on. So she must have been mindful enough to think, well, this might be associated. I better send it.
Right. Oh, she had all sorts of angles, I'm sure, because these are the same ones that I have. Like, oh, you should really spool up on this topic. This is so related to what you were talking to me about the other day.
Yeah.
So I have learned to make money from this and not necessarily to foist it on people, although you might feel that way if you follow my LinkedIn profile. The way it developed for me was just a natural, this is what we do. We share these tidbits. They could be great, they could be off. My point of departure for how this really got to be my whole reason for being is that I have an amazing amount of empathy. And I worked at a very formative place. It was a satellite telecommunications startup, and I was responsible for circulating. Every day was do or die, $6 billion. Every day was do or die. We didn't have intranets or extranets. We had fax machines. And if I didn't have what I needed to get to the right people at the right time, which is the old adage for KM, it was painful. And so that's kind of where my pain point roots of my sharing started.
All right, so let me just flip this. So I know your background, your official college training is around library sciences, correct?
I have a master's in that. My undergrad is in music.
Oh.
It is.
So what's your musical forte? What do you do?
Voice, but mine was performance, and performance major at James Madison University School of Music, was really immersed in music analysis and theory, even though I had so much information about the macro and the micro.
Mm-hmm.
And so leading, we could have a lot of points of departure on that one.
So from music, and the word I'm hearing in what you just described is synthesizing.
That's it.
If you're traveling from different areas in order to comprehend. So an expert might just stick in one hemisphere, but more of a synthesizer or a generalist will dance all over the place and be a butterfly to collect bits to understand more, or at least try to understand more. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have been traditionally a boundary spanner, so I will have multiple things that I sort of monitor. And as I get more and more specialized and in depth with the field that I'm pursuing in taxonomies, ontologies, and knowledge graphs and Gen AI tools, it's still helpful to be a boundary spanner. So again, it's that macro and then the micro, and how do they come together and how do they shift?
In your opening, you talked about knowledge domains.
Yeah.
So I quickly found the Empire State University, and they have a nice little page here on knowledge domains. And see if you agree with this. I don't know if we're talking the same thing. Different knowledge domains are declarative, procedural, strategic, self-knowledge, tacit knowledge, and integrated knowledge. Is that the domains you're speaking of?
No, not particularly. When I talk about a knowledge domain, we're talking about being in a given entity, like an enterprise or an NGO or a nonprofit,
Got it. Yeah, organizational knowledge domain. Got it. Well, it's funny because strategic, self, tacit, and integrated, procedural, and declarative, they all kind of work here. It works in that bucket. It's pretty cool. What out of the world of an internal structure of knowledge for an organization do you find is like the weakest link? What seems to be the big bucket of divots that doesn't work well?
Great question. Siloing, which is something that is becoming more and more of an Achilles heel for organizations, because they have these repositories and they have these databases and they have structured and they have unstructured content. And all of these things live and don't talk to one another. So I would definitely say that's one of the biggest ones.
Okay, so I'm going to back up the train here. I think silos, in the idea of how organizations are split, silos are those things that are usually tied to people and structure. But you're pushing it down to the data repository systems and that sort of digital structure. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it starts there because we don't want it to be micro. We want the ability through the use of, say, a knowledge graph to be able to pull those disparate sources together semantically. And then rather than worrying about where this came from and which repository or which tool, be able to query semantically with richer and more contextually complex queries that pull from all of these data, structured or unstructured, pull and make much more semantically rich meaning from using these graphs.
Okay, so I'm going to go to, for the listener, the IBM definition, ibm.com, of a knowledge graph is also known as a semantic network, represents a network of real-world entities such as objects, events, situations, or concepts, and illustrates the relationships between them. Well, isn't that an ontology?
Yes, ontologies make that happen.
Okay,
Yep.
so you're saying that in this day and age, of all the enterprise level tools you'd ever want to see, we're still in this bucket of things don't connect.
That's it.
Well, what the heck are we doing? What's the problem? I mean, it's not, hey, every salesman's got the solution for this. What is the problem?
Those systems aren't connected. Let's all be the bridge, shall we? We will be the bridge.
So is the problem because of archaic systems and or disparate systems, meaning that, oh, that division just went out and bought their own stuff regardless what the rest of the organization was doing, and now they're stuck in that bucket unless somebody at the top says, oh, hey, we're getting rid of all these little pieces and we're doing this one master enterprise level solution. That's part of it, but is it also a matter of standardization? Are there standardization issues across old and new and that sort of thing? Can you go into that?
Yeah. So this is definitely a multi-pronged thing. I would say, first of all, none of the nirvana of semantic tools can work if the data isn't enriched with metadata and using standards. So you have to have those building blocks, and that is a big one. But really, it comes from both the executive strategies. What is the overarching mission? What is the drive? What are we building capacity for so that we have the impact that we want to have? So you have to look at it from, do we know what we know? Do we know what we know and how we know it? What don't we know to do what we need to do? Those are big overarching strategy things. But from the bottom up, you do need those metadata standards. You do need clean data. And so it's a multi-pronged problem.
Who owns that problem? You've talked about a couple of different things. I started with the chief technology officer, then that moved over to the chief knowledge officer. Then I'm like, well, we need a chief cognition officer or somebody that kind of combines all the pieces.
Yes, and the pieces are, again, multi-pronged or multifaceted, another zinger of a word for a taxonomist. But no, everyone owns the problem. Who is in charge of the strategy for achieving the mission or the organization or the enterprise?
But somebody's got to be accountable for it, though. I mean, everybody can own it, but who's accountable? Who's in charge?
Okay, let's just stick to the who's accountable? The people who run the company. So that's not just the CEO, that's the communications officer, that's the human resources officer, that's all of the stakeholders that want to align the enterprise with how are we managing our knowledge assets so that we do what we do better and find out what we aren't doing that we should be doing.
I'm just looking up something. So I had a bit of a pushback using the language of knowledge asset in the last couple of years.
Oh, yes.
Do you think that's yeah. All right. So let's dig on that. So is it an asset or not?
If you look at the book by Douglas Laney from Gartner talking about infonomics, he looks completely at the world of data as an asset, as a competitive, intelligent advantage. And so his work focuses on information and data assets. It doesn't focus on knowledge assets, but we know that we have to be able to show our work with both the data and the content. I will always argue that these are knowledge assets, whether they are data, information, or captures and conversations, storytelling. I will always argue that if you don't have your arms around and have a way to leverage and harness each of those elements, then you are missing a huge asset.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. I took a look at Cambridge, take a look at their dictionary on what knowledge asset is. And actually, I love this definition.
Cool.
Knowledge asset is information or skills within a business that makes it more valuable or competitive.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, right. But why is that such a hard sell? Because I've been on the fence. I see it as an asset just because of that definition. I've always seen it as knowledge as an asset. And there are some that push back on that language. But then I also have seen it as, I come from a natural resource background, managing timber and timberlands and forestry and all that. So I also think of knowledge as a resource. But if you look up natural resource, it's all geological. It's nothing to do with, or, atmospheric. It's nothing to do with what we're talking about. I still feel knowledge is a resource also. As a taxonomist, how do you split these hairs, and why do people care so much?
I'm not sure I follow your question.
The different terminologies, it's either this or it's that or it's neither.
No.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't look at it as a taxonomist in this case.
Okay.
So a resource is definitely what I characterize these, let's call them resources, not assets, just for argument's sake. It's that environment of how do we get to what we do know? How do we get to what people know? How do we socialize, and how do we communicate, and how do we have those cultures? So you can call it a resource, you can call it research, you can call it any number of things. I like to call it an asset because when you use what you have to innovate and learn and grow, and it's a journey, how could that not be an asset?
Yeah. I'm with you. Going off the asset base, can we make the leap to a knowledge economy?
Oh, sure. Everything now is this journey of innovation. How do we get our arms around what it is that we have? Do we even know what we have? Do we have what we need to do better? Do our bureaus of child labor over on this side talk to our food bureaus? And what are the intersections? What are the patterns that emerge? This is a really simplistic way of saying it, but not knowing what you do know and not knowing what you don't know is completely an economy. It's an economic impact on what you're doing, whether it's a humanitarian aid, whether it's an enterprise, whether it's a nonprofit.
What would be your advice to a organization, say small to mid, that is trying to figure out if they should bother worrying about their knowledge assets?
The answer is don't worry, do. Get your metadata standards in order and make it work for you. You don't have to apply a large organization enterprise solution to get more of what you have. If you're calling things what your stakeholders and what you need to do to communicate across those silos.
I'm going to throw back to your past history as an intern at the World Digital Library.
Yay!
Hey, everybody, if you go to the World Digital Library, which is the Library of Congress's outfit, you're going to find all kinds of things you can't believe. And somebody somewhere said, maybe we should digitize this stuff. Maybe somebody could use it. Maybe there's some value to this. Maybe it's an asset to somebody. Yeah? So tell me.
Word, hashtag asset.
Let's go back to that experience because in your LinkedIn, you talk about synthesizing, identify, locate, review, and synthesize these materials and objects. That's what we're saying organizations should be doing at any level, right? You're saying, hey, you got to have somebody's got to be accountable for all this stuff you got. If you're not, then that shows you have it doesn't align to anybody's vision that this stuff matters.
Well, that's it, for the meaning of it, not for the sake of doing those things or learning from what has been gathered and made explicit, not just to have it in catalogs and search intranets and those things, to make it usable and reusable.
It's not to say save everything.
No.
Because there's right? Because eventually you're going to kill yourself with lack of storage. But there has to be a policy in place to say what's in, what's out. Oh, yeah. We save this for 7 years and delete it, right? The records management stuff. Mm-hmm. So can you kind of give the listener kind of an overview of what this intern was like for you at the World Digital Library?
Yeah, happy to do it. It was a phenomenal opportunity since I do live nearby, and at the time I was at Catholic University for Library and Information Science. But what was going on with this that I was working on, which at the time was a really big deal, was finding ways to work with Wikipedia and Wikimedia and find ways to surface what the World Digital Library was doing by adding links in articles about these artifacts and objects to point back to the World Digital Library. So it wasn't just sitting somewhere in a server in the World Digital Library. It was being put into places where people wouldn't know that the library existed, but they might be looking it up on Wikipedia and say, oh, I never knew that. Let me go read more, not knowing that there was a World Digital Library.
Give us an overview for those that may not be library savvy, the distinction between what you just described, the Library of Congress, and then what this must have been. I don't know, how long ago did this digital library become an entity, and then how did it grow?
It's been quite a while. I was there in 2010, and that World Digital Library is no longer growing or extant. It is now just a piece of the Library of Congress writ large. It was a consortium of world libraries all over the globe, the Egyptian library, or the library in Alexandria, those major UNESCO world libraries. The question again was, what's the difference between?
So if we're talking about organizations that see how adoption and innovation have to happen, I would assume the Library of Congress probably sat on their hands for a while waiting to see what the internet was going to be until they started, maybe we should do something. I just think the percolation process for something as historic or culturally bound as a library system to adopt a digital way must have been a slow wheel turn, I'm guessing. No?
I don't really know the answer to that, unfortunately.
Okay.
But everything was becoming a digital library at that time around the world. It was a UNESCO, mandate. It was like, let's get this going. Let's put these resources together, meaning resources of the different world libraries. So I wasn't there for the buildup. I was there to do my internship, which was to surface and increase the audience.
What I just did was, just to clarify, the digital library was launched in 2009, which sounds like pretty recent history. as you know what I mean?
Not to me, but yeah.
So, all right. Well, we'll drop that little thread there. So thanks for sharing that.
Oh, sure.
So we've talked about problematic areas, and it all sounds very basic when we're talking about just basic records keeping skills of an organization. Is there any resource you would suggest for an organization, such as a text that you liked or some source that's freely available that could give them kind of a self-help, kind of a better way?
That just depends on the scale. That I wouldn't want to give a one-size-fits-all recommendation for that. The things that I'm reading now are the KM Graph Cookbook by Andreas Blumer and Helmut Nagy, or Nagy, I think he says it, Nagy. I'm also in the middle of, I'm jumping in and out of the AI Enterprise by Seth Early. Not all enterprises are ready for that kind of a scale. And so it depends on the size, the purpose, the mission. Is it enterprise? Is it nonprofit? Is it an NGO? I think the most important thing that we could say for one size fits all is that you have to pay attention to embedding any asset with good metadata. You don't need to necessarily read about the good metadata, but you need to put yourself in the position of being able to care and steward. It's like the care and feeding of a garden. You're constantly making sure that the metadata is ready to go and make it data ready, so that when you do get to the point that you can turn on some of these more sophisticated approaches, you'll be ready to have data that works for your organization and out in the world as linked data, which enriches semantic complexity.
Okay, so I'm going to walk the listener through a kind of what does this mean to them, to an individual?
Good.
I looked up the definition of metadata, and guess what it says? Data about data. It's the data of data. So the simple idea of what that would be to a regular person on the street was using your mobile device to take a photograph.
Yes, good idea.
The photograph itself is an image of whatever that image is, but associated with that are date and time, sometimes location. There could be other metadata that's automatically generated at the point of click that now becomes part of the image that most people don't look at. It's not in the forefront. That metadata gives you the availability to have machines in order to connect with the image in different ways. Would that be a good explanation?
That's a really good explanation. Metadata comes in descriptions in metadata properties, like it's an image, it's a file, it's in this format, it has this date it was created by. More descriptions that are different styles of descriptions that you add yourself because at the end of the day, I would like to be able to associate this piece
Right.
with this piece to bring together in a new collection because they were both at the Hollywood Bowl in 1924, whereas they may not be housed together.
Would it simply be referred to that function tagging?
That's
Is that tagging?
tagging is considered to be a more informal thing when you are doing metadata and metadata standards. Yeah, you're tagging, but you're doing it less.
It's more of a categorization, Thank you.
Classification. You're good.
Yeah. That's why I don't book these after lunch. All right.
I should have known.
Would the tagging concept more fall into a folksonomy?
It has the connotations of that. There are various levels of control, and tagging by the person is an ability to make it more user oriented.
Right.
Whereas if you're coming at it from a taxonomist or a librarian, you want controlled vocabulary. Yeah. Tagging can be in the generation or in the general direction of the spectrum toward folksonomy. That's a good way to put it.
Everybody wondered what you would decide to be your definition of knowledge management.
I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah, I bet.
Knowledge management for me is not any one discipline. It's a series of complementary disciplines with the communication, the culture, the strategy. To me, knowledge management is just under the strategy for the mission. Whatever it takes to advance that strategy, whether it's technology, I prefer to pick people first, people and their processes and their stakeholders. So you've got the need to keep them easily able to access and discover what they need to know to do what they need to do and to do it better. So for me, that's the general knowledge management umbrella, and it has multiple flavors and implementations and strategies. But as a knowledge manager for myself, I am working with people first to derive frameworks and models of what they know and how they need to access it and discover it so that they can improve and learn and collaborate as knowledge management participants.
In that framework, would it be safe to say you're designated a organizational learning environment? You want to have that behavior, right, from the people that they're going to they're going to participate. They should participate. Can you technology that away? Can you just buy the technology that makes everybody play?
No, it's a top down, middle across, bottom up. Everybody has to understand that if they have a tool, if the tool doesn't work for them or it hasn't been engineered for their needs and their workflows and business processes, nobody will use it. It's a mindset. It's an understanding that we're doing this so that we can get here. It's a journey.
How do you foster that culture?
Well, I am not in the business of having to foster that culture. It's an all hands on deck situation through change management, organizational development, learning organizations. For me, I foster it by understanding why people call things the way they call them. Is that how different stakeholders can access it, or how can I make multiple ways of discovering those things? I am part of breaking down the tech so that humans can take advantage. I'm sorry, I am not necessarily the person that fosters that culture from top down to bottom up. I do it where I'm at.
So your grandmother.
That's right. And my mother.
And your mother.
Well, my poor husband.
Quit your fostering. You don't have to foster everybody you talk to.
No.
Yeah, I got you.
I know. It was a lot easier when it was just little newspapers or parts of a book. Now it's everything everywhere all the time.
What is the future? I won't say for the field of knowledge management, because I don't think we're cohesive enough to say we have anything to stand on other than an ISO. But what's the future? I couch that with this. I still see and hear there's a downslide of KM, and I also see an uptick in KM. and it's not industry specific. I think I've seen organizations try it and do it, and then they're like, "Yep, we're not doing it anymore," and then other ones pick it up.
We just can't get around the fact that the information is just pumping out exponentially, and now we can't really get our arms around it from the AI part. But I'm very pro developing the human critical thinking skills, empowering people in their business processes to understand how to use special Gen AI conversational tools or other tools that are like knowledge graphs, but they're more to the scale. The future for me is making sure that people don't stick their head in the sand and that they come around and they understand what the impact and the benefits are for them to be proactive by getting wherewithal to not be afraid of using these tools. I think a lot of people are, oh, I give up all the tech, I give up. I was feeling that way a couple of years ago, and I realized I can't. I have to make this work for myself and help other people. Because if you don't get that human piece in the human in the loop really clear about what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how you as a SME are going to know if it's a good answer or not, how to use the tools in the best way that they were intended to be used. Those types of things. The future for me is to make sure that people show one another the best way to use these things to save themselves time and not feel left behind. That's kind of a shorter term future, but it's all about how do we raise the human impact.
The human impact is a challenge. As you said, there is a point where you're tired of treading water and you just say, all right, I'm done. And I've hit that wall a few times. And I will say it'll probably come more and more as I spend more time on this earth. But there is that inquisitive piece of like, I want to learn. I have a desire to understand.
Yes, that's great.
That's right. So that's the only thing that keeps me in the lane.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody has that. The frustration piece, I just talked to somebody yesterday that's still dealing with a flip phone. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even back myself up 20 years to think of what was just that. There's a comfort zone.
Totally.
So they don't want to get outside of their fear, or they're just done. They're like, I'm full. I've learned enough. I'm going to go watch TV. See you later.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see that across any enterprise in particular, that in an industry or something like that? Is there worse industries than others? The saturation of next?
Well, I do see it in government. I do see it government.
Yes.
I am not in a sector primarily. My sector primarily is international development. And so people know they have to keep learning. And I would like to be able to take people as best I can and say, okay, what are you working on right now? What is this business process? And how can I show you how to save yourself some time and do this to the degree that will really add value to your product, take you from being reactive or my head in the sand to proactive. How can you see patterns, things emerge, et cetera, that you couldn't see before?
You keep talking this international space. Is there a nationality, is there a geographical region where the people are just like natural KM adaptive people?
What a great question. I can't answer that in particular. Again, it's a matter of understanding more, giving the voice to the locations and the municipalities and the local regions rather than pushing KM down from above from an NGO or from funders. And so we're finding that local indigenous knowledge communities don't want to share per se until they are shown what the benefits are for them. A very large emphasis in international development now is to raise those voices, equip those people with more ways to talk to one another across regions, and start to sow the seeds of natural KM, storytelling, cultural preservation, also digital preservation. It's a very growing and new direction and priority.
There's not one culture you can say is just really genetically set to do this.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about that, but I know you could talk to Gladys Kemboy. She is a KM rock star. She has done tremendous work in Africa, in Kenya, and she could tell you a little bit about how she sees it.
I ask that routinely just because I would like to hear somebody say, oh, the folks in the Netherlands or Holland, they're all, I don't know, wherever that place may be, There seems to be, as a personality trait of a people, there seems to be, I would think, an easy, oh yeah, these folks are not good, and these guys
The
are
Irish.
yeah.
My grandmother was Irish. So I think you've got a fabulous question there.
Okay.
And I think it would be something you could encourage lots of people to talk about.
Well, thank you.
I'm unfortunately very boring and don't have a good answer for you on that.
Then I think the bigger question is that, of all the things that humans study, and we know that in anthropology and other domains, civilizations are looked at to a very large depth of understanding. And with everything I know about the behaviors of what it takes to be a good KMer and somebody who cares about knowledge and helping others and learning in a very rudimentary way, these are all tribal activities. This is a
very much so.
Right. It's an indigenous tribal mentality of strengthening the capacity and the proficiency of others through knowledge.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So maybe we're just a KM tribe all of ourselves, and it doesn't matter your background or creed. I don't know. I've met so many different people in your seat that all have a different story of how they landed or got into knowledge management, and not in any one straight line has it ever happened that I can recall. It didn't happen that way for me. There seems to be a thread of similar personality traits.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's my perception. That's my anecdotal observation, that there seems to be a level of caring that is not a trainable skill set. It is usually rooted in family or society or somewhere in the upbringing that makes that part of their person.
That's fascinating. You would have a really good view of all of that because of all the conversations that you've had. That's really fascinating.
All right, my friend. Any last words of wisdom from Ireland or anywhere else?
No, I got into knowledge management because I found a tool to share documents. I started deploying extranets before they were called that. Nobody was on a shared network drive. Nobody had the ability to email, really. As these tools emerged, I could immediately see that we could connect people that weren't on a connected network to get those documents to them. And so that was my gateway drug to becoming a knowledge manager.
That's usually the thing, right? It's something that you see the value of.
That was it.
And isn't it disappointing as a seer of this that those that do not see, and it's like, how can you not see the value of this?
Yes.
Are you passionate about that? I mean, does your blood pressure come up and you're like, what the heck? What do you not see here?
So I was so convinced that this tool that I wanted to deploy would answer that mail so resoundingly successfully that I just deployed it without asking permission at a law firm. So, and they loved it. I know. And I wonder sometimes, where did the gumption go? Because now it's not that easy.
Don't press that button yet. Wait a minute. We haven't talked to everybody.
I was just, because I knew it was the answer, and that's why I did it.
Where does that confidence come from?
Because it solves the problem.
Yeah, but where does that confidence come from? Not every person on the planet has the wherewithal to press go. To hell with the circumstances or what's going to, right? I mean, not everybody has that. So where does that confidence level come from? Is that a family trait also?
I don't know. I think I was pretty insane now looking back, but it changed the course of my career. So in a good way.
Maybe we change that word of insane to just super confident and call it a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you for joining our little community here across the globe of knowledge people. Thank you.
I enjoyed our conversation so much.
Thank you for joining this extraordinary journey, and we hope the experiences gained add value to you and yours. See you next time at Because You Need to Know. If you'd like to contact us, please email byntk@pioneer-ks.org or find us on LinkedIn.
Thank you for listening to Because You Need to Know, the Reference Podcast in Knowledge Management. My name is Soni Toneme. As an art administrator, Because You Need to Know has been my go-to podcast and has helped me hone my management skills. Please consider sponsoring the podcast with your business.